Most people don't start budgeting because they want control. They start budgeting because they feel anxious. They feel like money is slipping through their fingers. They feel behind, even when the numbers don't fully explain why. They feel like they should be doing better than they are. And budgeting, it feels like the responsible thing to do, the adult thing to do, the thing that will finally make everything feel organized and calm. So they sit down, open up a spreadsheet or an app, and they start assigning rules to their money. And for a brief moment, it actually feels good. There's relief in naming categories. There's comfort in seeing everything laid out. There's a sense that maybe, finally, things are under control. But then something strange happens. Instead of feeling safer, they start feeling tighter, more restricted, more aware of every small purchase, more hesitant, more guilty. And over time, many people notice something unsettling. Even though they're budgeting, they feel poorer than before. Not poorer on paper, poorer emotionally, more stressed, more vigilant, more aware of what they can't do instead of what they can. If that's ever been your experience, I want to say this clearly before we go any further. That reaction is not a failure of discipline. It's a predictable outcome of how budgeting interacts with the human brain. And once you understand why that happens, a lot of the shame people carry around money starts to fall apart. Look, most budgeting systems are built on a quiet assumption. The assumption is that if you tell people what they should do with their money, they'll simply do it. If you create enough categories, if you track closely enough, if you set the right limits, good behavior should follow. And look, that logic only works on spreadsheets. It does not work on humans. Because this is what I've learned. Humans do not experience money as a math problem. They experience it as a constant series of decisions under uncertainty. Every day, money shows up in small, unremarkable ways. Groceries, gas, coffee, kids' expenses, Amazon, a lunch you didn't plan on, a bill you forgot was coming. Budgeting forces you to evaluate each of those moments in isolation. Is this allowed? Did I already spend too much here? Am I breaking the plan? Can I make this work if I'm more disciplined next week? Those questions may seem harmless, but over time they train your brain to associate spending with danger. Not because spending is bad, but because every transaction becomes a test. And look, when every transaction feels like a test, money stops feeling abundant even when it is. So this is really the first way that budgeting quietly makes people feel poorer than they actually are. It teaches your brain to focus on scarcity at the transaction level instead of safety at the system level. Think about how most people interact with a budget in real life. They don't sit down once a month, make a plan, and then calmly follow it to perfection that month. They check it constantly, or they avoid it completely. They hesitate over small decisions because they don't know how everything fits together. And then when they overspend in one category, which is almost inevitable, the emotional reaction is rarely neutral. It's guilt, it's frustration. Look, it's the sense that they messed up again. This is important. Guilt does not create better financial behavior. Guilt creates vigilance, and vigilance is exhausting. People who live in a constant state of vigilance around money are not reckless. They're tired, and tired people don't make calm strategic decisions. They make reactive ones. So budgeting creates a cycle that kind of looks like this. It starts with clarity, moves to restriction, then goes to vigilance. Then after vigilance, fatigue follows, then avoidance, then guilt, and then somehow we reset and do the whole thing over. Each cycle reinforces the belief that money is something that you're always slightly failing at, even if the numbers don't support that story. Sadly, another way budgeting makes people feel poorer is by collapsing time. Budgets live in the present moment. They ask, can I afford this right now? But your brain isn't actually asking that question. Your brain is asking, am I safe overall? Like, am I good? Those are very different questions. And when you evaluate every decision independently without a clear sense of margin, you lose context. You stop seeing money as a flowing system and you start seeing it as a series of landmines. See, this is why people with decent incomes can still feel anxious about small purchases. It's not because the purchase is dangerous. It's because the system doesn't make the answer obvious. And when the answer isn't obvious, the brain assumes risk. Over time, that trains scarcity thinking. Not because you are actually scarce, but because your system keeps your nervous system guessing. See, this is where I want to slow down and make a distinction that changes everything. There is a difference between financial reality and financial experience. And it's clear as day. Financial reality is what the numbers say. Financial experience is what it feels like to live inside those numbers day after day. Budgeting often improves reality slightly while worsening your experience dramatically. And humans live inside of experience, not spreadsheets. That's why someone can be saving money and still feel stressed. That's why someone can be doing everything right and still feel behind. The system they're using is technically correct, but it's psychologically hostile. See, when I was working as a CFO, I saw this same pattern in companies. Organizations that focused obsessively on line item control often felt tense, brittle, and reactive. Teams were afraid to spend. Projects slowed down. People avoided decisions because every dollar felt dangerous. The healthiest organizations, however, did not micromanage transactions. They managed the structure, the cash flow, and the buffers. Look, they just knew what was protected. They knew what was flexible, and they knew what margin existed. And honestly, I truly believe that the same principle applies to personal finances. But most people are never taught to think this way. Instead, they're told to just budget harder or to be more disciplined. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Budgeting doesn't fail because people lack discipline. It fails because it asks humans to behave like machines. It assumes consistent energy, perfect memory, and emotional neutrality. Real life provides none of these things. So what actually works better? Not abandoning structure, but changing the kind of structure that you're working with. So this is where I want to talk about the alternatives. The alternative to budgeting is not chaos. It's system design. And I really want you to follow me on this. Instead of trying to control behavior transaction by transaction, you build a system that creates safety automatically. That system has 3 jobs. Number 1 is to make your obligations predictable. Number 2 is to make spending feel safe within your limits. Number 3 is to reduce the number of decisions your brain has to carry. Listen, when these 3 things are true, money stops feeling heavy. All of your anxiety goes away. So let's talk about these shifts. The first shift is moving from categories to containment. Most people keep all their money in one place and try to mentally assign meaning to it, and that forces this constant interpretation. Containment removes that interpretation. See, when bills live in just one account, spending lives in another, and savings or buffer lives somewhere else, your decisions get simplified. You don't ask, okay, hey, can I afford this? You ask, is this coming from my spending account? Those are 2 different questions. That single change removes dozens of micro decisions every single week. The second shift is prioritizing margin over optimization. And I really want you to follow me because this is what I mean. Budgets often focus on squeezing every dollar out of every category. Systems focus on creating breathing room. So this is where margin comes in. And margin is what makes your money feel safe. Margin absorbs surprises. Margin allows mistakes without panic. Look, people who feel wealthy are rarely the ones with the most optimized budgets or the clearest budgets. They're the ones with the most space. The third shift is using automation as emotional relief, not productivity. See, automation is not about being clever. It's about removing uncertainty. When bills pay themselves, your brain stops tracking them. When savings happen automatically, progress doesn't rely on your motivation. When spending money is predefined, your guilt disappears. You're simply operating inside a system that has already decided. So when people switch from budgeting to systems, something subtle but profound happens. Money gets quieter. Look, you stop checking your accounts compulsively. They stop feeling like every purchase is a moral decision. They stop associating progress with deprivation. They don't just feel richer on paper, they feel safer in practice. And safety is what most people were actually chasing all along. So if budgeting has made you feel tighter, poorer, or more anxious, this is not a personal failure. It's a signal that the tool you were given was never designed for how humans actually live. And if you want to understand what that design is and see this step by step, the foundation is the 30-day reset video on this channel. That's where I walk through how to build visibility, containment, and automation in a way that creates calm before it creates growth. But here's the thing that most people never get told. Feeling wealthy is not about how much you restrict yourself. It's about how safe your system makes you feel. And once that changes, everything else gets easier.